Welcome into the swamp where Florida State falls 40-17 in the regular season finale for 2019. It was not too unexpected, the final result,
No.
but it also seemed like there was a lot that happened in this game. I mean, right off the bat, Florida goes right down the field and scores, which was kind of maybe a harbinger of things to come for Florida State's defense, which really didn't do much of anything on the day.
Don't say that, Ira. They forced 2 punts.
They did force 2 punts. Took a
Three,
little
really.
while.
One was a fake punt that they faked a punt up 23 points in the fourth quarter.
But Florida State came back and scored to make it 7-7. You're thinking, all right, here we go.
That's going to be a shootout.
Kendall Browse dialed up a little hook and ladder. They went for it on 4th and 1. It seemed, things got off to a pretty good start the first 10 minutes of the ball game, and then Florida State's offense completely fell apart. Had some opportunities to hit James Blackman had some opportunities to hit Tamari and Terry on some deep balls. That didn't happen. And then the defense really just didn't get much of anything. It feels like it's kind of an afterthought, this game. Even going into the game, a lot of people weren't really excited about this game because it didn't seem like Florida State had much of a chance, and it turns out they didn't. So now we move forward, looking at the coaching search, culminating this week, where they're going to go for a bowl game. So really there's a lot more to be discussed, but I think we have to obviously address what we saw here, which wasn't really much different than what we saw during the regular season.
I feel like maybe he'll coach in the bowl game, but obviously I think we saw Harlan Barnett's last game as the Florida State, last regular season game anyway, as the Florida State defense coordinator. I kind of wrote about that some in the column that you fine folks will be reading here momentarily. Man, it was just a train wreck. These last 2 years have been really the last 3 years, but at least in 2017, the defense wasn't embarrassing. These last 2 years, the defense has been just, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, I feel like Florida left 14 or 17 points out there, and that's not a great Florida offense. That quarterback's pretty good, but he's not Danny Werpel. But they put up 40 points. They had 30 in the first half. I don't know when Florida scores 30 and a half on someone. It just never worked with Harlan Barnett for whatever reason. Having to switch maybe to a 3-4, even if he didn't want to. Didn't have a ton of great personnel, NFL talent anyway. And was beset by some injuries this season. There's still none of those excuses are a good enough excuse for how bad this defense has looked, right? It just looks so many times completely lost. There's absolutely no pass rush, which might have something to do. When they blitz, they never get home. They don't even look like they know what gap they're supposed to be blitzing in half the time. It's apparently very easy to pick up. And also, the defensive ends don't do diddly-poo. They just don't. And I don't know if that's because they don't have a defensive ends coach. Odell Higgins isn't a defensive end, but, he's the defensive line coach, or now he's the interim head coach. But just anyway, it was a bad defense all year, and it culminated in this, 500-yard performance tonight.
Yeah, and, obviously, they've had some things go against them as well. Marvin Wilson's been out for the year for the last couple of weeks. Hamza Nasruddin, who's been really the star on defense.
Yeah, that was a bummer, by the way. That was really awful to see.
Hamza, really has been a guy. It sounded like Odell Higgins talking after the game. He was a little bit emotional about Hamza and what he's meant to the defense. Had over 100 tackles this season. Really was a one-man wrecking crew for a defense that's not very good for really the second half of the season. He goes down with looked like just a horrific lower leg injury. He came back. He was on the sidelines for part of the second half on crutches. But there was just walking wounded along the sideline. Marvin Wilson's out. Jaden Lars-Woodby had a season-ending injury earlier this year. Some guys on offense as well. So this year, this is a team that was not very good to start with, and then had just injury after injury after injury. But Odell said after the game, "There's no excuses. Next man up." Florida State is a team with a lot of talent, you would think, at least by the recruiting rankings, what they say. So there should have been guys that could step up and play. But the pass defense has been terrible, as you said. Both seasons Harlan Barnett's been here. He does have one more year on his contract. We don't expect that to be honored probably. He's probably going to get a parting gift. You'd have to assume, because the defense has gotten worse and worse as the year's gone on. They did some odd things again tonight. I don't know, probably 15 to 20% of the snaps, they would bring their safeties up in the box and put a linebacker back on the deep, playing center field.
Adonis
which
Thomas
was odd.
playing center field.
Emmett
Rice
Rice
a couple times.
Amari Gaynor.
They had two players covering one receiver, one up top, one playing kind of bump and run, and then somebody right. And it wasn't like they were covering Percy Harbin, and they had another guy right behind him. They just do odd things. Aslan asked Odell about some of those formations or schemes. Odell didn't want to talk about it because, Odell's pretty upset about a loss, and it might have been, probably is his last game as a head coach at Florida. if he had any chance, I think, and we've said this, and I don't even know how good a chance it was going to be anyway, plausibly, but any chance they had to come in here and win this game. They lost just like Willie would have lost. They had 13 penalties. It was it was over at halftime, just like it's been with this team against its rivals for the last 2 years. They've just been, other than the one Miami game, they've just been completely humiliated by their rivals, and tonight wasn't any exception.
Yeah, and I think Odell's done what he hoped.
Yeah,
he's done what he's
Got him to a
tried
bowl.
to do, what he can do. But he took over this program late in the season. What he talked about in his post-game press conference, which you can find on the site as well, warchant.com, is he talked about needing to build better habits and learning that everything you do, preparing in every step of the way on and off the field, is what manifests with how you play in games. And when you talk to the players after the game, we talked to Odell, tons of missed assignments, tons of poor technique, and so that's what this team has become. And whoever gets the head coaching job, and we'll talk about that now, this is not probably going to be a super quick fix. I mean, there's personnel issues, but then there's also just a lot of kind of ingrained poor habits, I think, in this football team. And you saw them throughout the game. You saw some personal fouls. You saw some just careless play. You saw emotions getting the best of people. And part of that could be attributed to all the tumultuous circumstances they've dealt with over the last couple seasons. These players are going to be going through another head coach, another coaching change, several new position coaches again, probably a whole new coaching staff. But we should at least find out some news this week. We expect that a new head coach is going to be announced maybe as early as Tuesday, but definitely this week. So if you want to let everybody know who it's going to be, Corey, that would be cool.
Yeah, it's actually so good news, Florida State fans. I don't know if I can pull that little trick off, but we should say that Coburn and Thrasher, I think, are almost always here at this game, are always here at the football games. We did not see them tonight, which leads us to believe, and we know they're not here. They were out somewhere else. Not sure where, but they were out somewhere else trying to lock down their next head coach, you have to imagine. And look, we say it's not going to be a quick fix. Obviously, it won't be a year. They're 18-19 in the last 3 seasons. Well, what were they from 07-09? Probably around the same, a little more, but not maybe 3 games over 500. So they weren't great then either. Jimbo had an advantage in that he knew what was wrong. He was in there. He saw firsthand what needed to be fixed. But in year 3, they were winning 12 games. It can happen. It can happen within 2 or 3 years if you make the right hire. But you got to make the right hire. And I'm telling you, man, I'm maybe I shouldn't get this emotional. I'm sick of watching this defense, man. I'm just sick of watching a Florida State defense that completely has no chance. Doesn't get any pass rush, doesn't create plays, doesn't hit. It's just not what Florida State football is supposed to be. So whatever you do, whoever you hire, he better be bringing in a bona fide defensive coordinator that you can trust. Not somebody that you don't really know or has done it at UTEP or has done it at San Jose State. Get somebody with the bona fides to get in here and fix this defense, because it needs to be fixed.
It does, but it's not the only problem, obviously.
No, what? No, that is the only problem.
Offensive line.
What? They were great. They only allowed 8 sacks tonight.
It's got to get better on the offensive line. It's got to get better at quarterback. And then the other issue is...
Do you think they're good enough where they are? Like, say they hired a defensive-minded coach. Do you think Briles and Clements did well enough that they're here next year?
It's hard to judge. I mean, I don't think that they necessarily guaranteed anything.
Yeah, right.
What we've seen
it
so
wasn't
far.
Good enough to guarantee them.
Yeah, I think they're an option. If whoever takes the head coaching job wants to consider them, nobody would be mad at him for considering him. But I don't think it's a no-brainer. The way Odell Hagens has always been kind of a no-brainer when there's a coaching change that he's going to stay on board. And I think you look at this team, and again, going to the offensive side of the ball, and especially the offensive line, there are some nice pieces. There's some young players. Dante Lucas, I think you feel pretty good about. Baselli will be back next year. Bavion Johnson will be back next year. You feel like the young Darius Washington, the young offensive tackle. Maurice Smith showed some things at times. There are some guys on the offensive line that you feel like maybe can make some strides. But there's also going to be guys leaving this team. Cam Akers almost undoubtedly will be going pro.
Yeah.
He did have a nice effort, getting over 100 yards tonight. He's had over 1,000 yards a season.
Like 1,100, I think.
Yeah.
So, good for him.
So nice,
really good player.
On a bad football team.
Yeah,
that says a lot.
Behind that offensive line.
And but
Marion Terry went over 1,000 yards on the season, and he didn't drop. He missed another 150 tonight by a couple yards, where he was just a little bit overthrown. But those were 2 75-yard touchdowns if you could connect with them.
But I think we have to
And
find
he
out.
might be gone.
Yeah, we have to find out what Tamari Terry's going to do. What
He said that he had put his name in. Isn't that right, Aslan? He had put his name in, but he obviously hasn't heard back yet. He'll figure it out. But he's obviously, I mean, at best it's 50-50 he comes back, right?
Yeah.
At best.
Well, not his name in to declare, but his name.
he put his name in to get an evaluation by
Sorry,
the
yeah,
underclassmen
that's what I meant.
advisory committee. He won't be the only one. A lot of
Right.
those guys, and so you really, even if a guy thinks for sure he's going right now, you don't know for sure until they get some feedback back from the advisory committee.
And it might matter who the next head coach is. If you
Yeah.
hire a coach that the last 4 years has had a 1,500-yard receiver or a Bolitnikov finalist or something to come in here, that's a pitch to Tamari and Terry that he might be okay with. He might that might be suitable for him. So you never know how much the head coach is going to affect things.
We'll
Can't be worse than this, though, folks.
there have to be better days ahead. That's what you have to keep on believing. In the meantime, the basketball team won the Emerald
There you go,
Classic,
Leonard.
Emerald Close Classic.
Can you coach football?
tournament. Maybe Leonard can bring the junkyard dog defense over here. We're going to sign off from the Swamp. We'll be back throughout the week with coverage. As we said, we expect a head coach
Almost
to be
certainly
announced.
this week, right?
Yeah.
And then on Sunday, for sure, we'll know the bowl. Like next
Yeah.
Sunday, 8 days from now, we'll know where the bowl destination
There is a
will be.
glimmer of hope for the Gasparilla Bowl.
Boston College had to win, and North Carolina had to win. They both had to
those
become bowl eligible, and they did. So those are two of the dominoes that had to fall for Florida State to be in play for the Gasparilla, and those both fell. So Shreveport or Detroit or El Paso. We'll love. Where's Gasparilla? St. Pete?
Yes.
St. Pete, Tampa?
same
Yeah,
thing,
right
thing.
there, same
Same
thing.
thing, Aslan.
It's where Mons is, baby.
All right, we're going to sign off from the Swamp for Aslan, Corey, and Ira. This is the Warchant Wrap.
The
Wrapping up
Warchant
for
Wrap.
last time
We
of
did
the
it.
beautiful 2019 Florida State football season.